Ladies and gentlemen, greetings to you all as we gather together in cyberspace. All courtesies observed, and I hope that wherever and whatever your circumstances, that you and your families are safe and well. And I trust that everyone is finding it in their hearts to exercise the best of human traits, of sharing, of empathy, and of kindness to our fellows in the midst of this pandemic. We're all connected with each other and with everything else on this planet. As you may know, my role as Special Envoy is to lead the charge around the world for the implementation of SDG 14, the ocean goal to conserve and sustainably use the ocean's resources. We universally agreed to this sustainable development goal at the United Nations back in 2015, and there is still so much work to be done. To put it plainly, there cannot be a healthy planet without a healthy ocean, and the ocean's health is currently in decline. That decline is scientifically observable in the rate at which the ocean is warming, in accelerating trends of deoxygenation, acidification, in the rates of destruction of vital habitats like mangroves, kelp, and seagrass meadows, in our overfishing 34.2% of the world's marine fish stocks, and in the onslaught of marine plastic pollution. As such, I'm very grateful to Infofish for giving me the opportunity of addressing you at the 16th World Tuna Trade Conference. I hope that some of what I have to say today can assist the tuna trade play its part in reversing the cycle of decline in which the ocean's health has been caught. Ladies and gentlemen, before we look at ways the tuna trade can assist the global quest for sustainability, please allow me to put my remarks within the context of the times in which we live. In his State of the Planet address delivered at Columbia University in New York last December, the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres said humanity is waging a suicidal war upon nature, pointing to 1 million species at risk of extinction and ecosystems disappearing before our eyes. A year earlier in Madrid at the climate conference, he had reported to the world that, quote, 3 major reports from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change confirm we are knowingly destroying the very support systems keeping us alive. End of quote. Lastly, I refer you to the recent release of WMO's State of the Global Climate 2020 report. Addressing the press conference to mark the release, WMO Secretary General Professor Tallis said, and I quote, "All key climate indicators and associated impact information provided in this report highlight relentless, continuing climate change and increasing occurrence and intensification of extreme events and severe losses and damage affecting people, societies, and economies. The negative trend in climate will continue for the coming decades, independent of our success in mitigation." A reasonable person draws an immediate conclusion from these unimpeachable descriptions of the context of our times. That is, that on behalf of our children and theirs, we must make peace with nature. Without further delay or preconditions, we have to sit down at the peace table and establish a relationship of new respect for and balance within nature's embrace. Essential to our peace making will be that we all commit to fundamental transformations that deliver us to a net zero carbon world by 2050. And fundamental to the peace process will be a rationalization and resetting of our relationship with the ocean's well-being. So, ladies and gentlemen, let me turn now to the tuna trade and its place within the precarious times we are approaching. I begin my thoughts on this by repeating the opening message of my keynote speech at FAO's Committee on Fisheries in February. What I said then was that it was within the spirit of making peace with nature that we should celebrate the 25th anniversary of the Code of Conduct for Responsible Fisheries and acknowledge the Code's beneficial influence. I also applauded the committee's adoption of a political declaration elucidating the challenges and opportunities guiding the fisheries sector towards a more sustainable future. The Kofi Declaration commits to sustainability and supports an evolving and positive vision for fisheries and aquaculture in the 21st century, one in which the sector is fully recognized for its contribution to fighting poverty, hunger and malnutrition, stressing its ability to prepare for and respond to changing climate and ocean conditions. In that speech, I emphasized the Declaration's acknowledgement that in order to scale up fisheries sustainability, we need to implement and improve fisheries assessment and management systems in all regions, particularly in those where fish stock status is declining or unknown. In this respect, let me underline that the Declaration calls for coordinated capacity building programs addressing the needs and priorities of developing countries, with particular attention to data-poor regions and reduction of the digital divide. As I'm sure you know, the most recent SOFIA report shows we are overfishing 34.2% of the world's marine fish stocks monitored by FAO, representing a threefold increase in overfishing since monitoring began in 1974. This is an unacceptable situation that has to be rectified if we are indeed to make peace with nature. The Kofi Declaration recognizes that where fisheries are effectively managed, stocks are above target levels or rebuilding, while where fisheries management is less effective, stock status and trends are worsening. Logic demands we accept we are only as strong as our weakest link. As I've already said, everything is connected, and this is particularly the case when it comes to the ocean. And so, to put it bluntly, if it is within the waters of weaker RFMOs that overfishing is occurring, part of the peacemaking process to which I have referred must be greatly enhanced assistance to these underperforming RFMOs. Ladies and gentlemen, the Global Tuna Alliance, with the Friends of Ocean Action and the World Economic Forum, are convening responsible businesses and governments and civil society organizations around a voluntary sustainability commitment known as the 2025 Pledge Towards Sustainable Tuna, or 25 PST, which sets out a framework for action that can achieve this bold ambition. The pledge is based on the fact that voluntary sustainable commitments and associated disclosure of performance are powerful tools for driving change in global supply chains. Across many sectors, there's been a shift towards increased transparency, and this builds accountability, providing businesses throughout the supply chain with additional incentives to achieve their performance goals. It also allows for improved oversight of business practices by investors and consumers in the wider community. The global ambition of the 25 PST is that tuna meets the highest standards of environmental performance and social responsibility, in particular through demonstrable improvements in supply chain practices and the sustainable management of tuna fisheries by 2025. To achieve this shared ambition, businesses in the tuna supply chain are being invited to join 25 PST and pledge to make demonstrable progress on the following three commitments. Firstly, pledging to continually improve the traceability systems in their tuna supply chains to enable greater transparency, and to advocate for improved transparency in tuna fisheries. Secondly, pledging to source from fisheries that meet the goals of environmental sustainability or are working towards them in a structured, time-bound process, and to advocate for comprehensive harvest strategies in tuna fisheries. And thirdly, pledging to complete effective due diligence regarding human rights risks in their tuna supply chains and advocate for implementation of international legislation to safeguard these rights. The Global Tuna Alliance is ensuring that there are many ways that companies can deliver on these pledges, with allowance for flexibility of approach, albeit with shared endpoints. Governments and civil society organizations are also invited to endorse the 25 PST. Endorsing the signatories supports the goals of the pledge, and where applicable, they signify they are willing to support the business signatories in meeting their commitments. It should be stated that governments play a critical role in improving and enforcing supply chain transparency and traceability. They have direct responsibilities, both in environmental sustainability of fisheries and in the social conditions within the supply chain. These responsibilities are exercised through their regulatory roles as port, coastal and flag states, through their membership of regional fisheries management organizations and other international organizations, and through their roles as domestic policymakers. Meanwhile, civil society organizations are a necessary collective voice of the public, and they too have an important place to fill as signatories of 25 PST. They play key roles at the forefront of environmental and social issues, communicating the importance of responsible government and business practices, and encouraging authentic, effective corporate responsibility plans. Ladies and gentlemen, I've covered these pledges in some detail because I believe they will be to the ultimate benefit of the signatories. The context of our times and the need to make peace with nature leads to this conclusion. The alliance was established by supply chain companies, including major retailers and tuna brands, and their suppliers and processors, in order to pool their commercial leverage to influence decision makers to manage tuna fisheries more responsibly. My take-home message is that the demand for sustainable and responsibly harvested tuna is growing, but areas of inadequate management and poor oversight are hindering our meeting this appetite. These weaknesses are definitely fixable, so we must honestly answer the question, why has our progress to date been slow? There is little doubt that quicker implementation requires a greater demonstration of political will. Let us therefore remember that the political process can be greatly stimulated by market advocacy. It is thus that I urge you to support 25 PST, and by becoming a signatory to it, make the most of being on board a reliable tuna industry vehicle creating priority alignment for governments and companies and civil society organizations. Ladies and gentlemen, I come from a background of rural development in a Pacific island country, in which small-scale fisheries is an integral element of our society. Thus, I was especially gratified to see in the 2021 Kofi Declaration for Sustainable Fisheries and Aquaculture strong recognition of the important role and contribution of artisanal and small-scale fisheries and aquaculture in poverty eradication and in providing livelihoods, as well as ensuring food security and nutritional needs of local communities. This is one of the reasons I have worked so closely with the WTO negotiators, striving to rid the world of the harmful fisheries subsidies, as called for in SDG 14.6. The new Director General of WTO has made this one of her top 2021 priorities, and she recently told the WTO negotiating group on rules that they need to get the job done on an agreed text by July. These harmful subsidies, totaling over $20 billion per year of public monies, are a major cause of ecosystem collapse, and they are severely damaging the interests of small-scale fishers. In all these tasks, if we are to make peace with nature, we have to be seized by thoughts and actions that embrace accountability, urgency, and pragmatic commitment. And as in all things, we must recognize our connectivity and embrace our personal and communal responsibilities for both the problems and the solutions. Ladies and gentlemen, some of you will be familiar with the accounts in the New Testament of Jesus dividing 7 loaves of bread and 2 fish in order to feed thousands of hungry people who had come far from their homes to listen to his words. Out of so little came so much. I thought of this division of a little into great abundance recently when I was communicating with the developers of cellular aquaculture in California. They explained how 1 cell of a living yellowfin tuna can be grown into a plate-ready tuna steak. Within a controlled environment, the cellular aquaculture process bypasses the generation of heads and tails and fins and skin and gills and guts and delivers a glistening tuna steak end product free of mercury and other toxins. Not 1 steak, but as many thousand steaks from that single cell needed to meet the demand. Diners are therefore delivered the same sensory experience and nutritional value of the traditional seafood product without challenging the sustainability of wild stocks. Out of so little, so much can come. The future is knocking at the door, and in a net zero world dedicated to circular economies, ruled by sustainability and respect for the natural world, cellular aquaculture may become more than provisioning for rich people's plates. Bring it to scale, and it may feed the multitudes. Ladies and gentlemen, my allocated time is up, but allow me to conclude with 2 quick points. We have just entered the UN Decade of Ocean Science for Sustainable Development. I urge all parties present to make the most of the upsurge of information that the Ocean Decade will deliver, as it reveals the estimated 80 to 90% of the ocean scientific information that is currently unknown. Support the Ocean Decade, that it may give us the science we need for the ocean we want. And lastly, the COVID-19 pandemic necessitated the postponement until next year of the UN Ocean Conference, to be co-hosted by the governments of Kenya and Portugal in Lisbon. In the meantime, in order to maintain momentum towards the conference and for the implementation of SDG 14, the President of the United Nations General Assembly is convening a high-level thematic debate on the ocean at the United Nations on June 1st for the benefit of member states and observers. In order to diligently represent Secretary General Guterres at the debate, I will be present in person in New York for the day in question. Guided by FAO and other relevant agencies of the UN system, fisheries and aquaculture will be a major element of our debate on June 1st. Ladies and gentlemen, I look forward to learning from Infofish in due course about the outcomes of your talks today on the subject of sustainable tuna management, social accountability, and certification. I wish you well in your discussions today, and I thank you for your attention to my words.